declare and affirm
that the evidence I shall give
shall be
now in its third year, the Post Office public inquiry, hearing testimony on a daily basis of lives ruined.
I hadn't stolen any money, so why am I paying something that I haven't stolen? The day of sentencing, the judge accused me of stealing from old age pensioners.
Tracy Felsted at the inquiry, which is probing what's been called the greatest miscarriage of justice in British history. The sub-postmaster was only 19 when she was wrongly convicted of theft and sent to prison for 6 months, one of thousands of lives damaged. The inquiry has given us a window into the heart of the scandal, and tonight we can open it a little further. What did the Post Office executives know and when? It's been revealed that the inquiry now has 80 covertly recorded audio tapes of senior Post Office executives during this scandal. Tonight, Channel 4 News can reveal some of the contents of what was said by Susan Crichton, the then Post Office senior lawyer. The Post Office had called in forensic accountants in 2012 to investigate the scandal. A year later, those accountants issued their first report and meetings are called, which are covertly recorded. At one, the Post Office lawyer is worried about MPs in Parliament who are campaigning to clear the names of the sub-postmasters. We've obtained a summary of some of the tapes. Susan, the Post Office lawyer, refers to Paula Vennells, the Post Office boss, having a meeting with James Arbuthnot, an MP, tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. And then Susan reports that Paula was concerned to shut down the MPs. There is also a record here of senior Post Office staff wishing to in some way control Alan Bates and his campaign on behalf of the sub-postmasters, Justice for Sub-Postmasters Alliance, as well as MPs. Susan, the Post Office lawyer, talks about managing the Justice for Sub-Postmasters Alliance. And then again, Susan asks if there is any way of shutting down the MPs' cases. What's meant by shutting down isn't explained. We approached both women for comment. Paula Vennells declined. Susan Crichton didn't respond. But what about the other people in the room also on tape? The forensic accountant's second sight, called in by the Post Office to investigate the scandal. We asked Second Sight's co-director Ian Henderson what he made of the summary of the tapes.
The significance is it was yet another attempt by Post Office to prevent these matters being uncovered. James Arbuthnot and a small group of MPs were determined, however, that Second Sight should be allowed to investigate these matters. Post Office did not want these matters to see the light of day and to be investigated.
That's the same Post Office, of course, who called in Second Sight in the first place to investigate this whole scandal. And the more they investigated, the more they found that the problem was in the technology the Post Office was using, not the sub-postmasters at all. The Post Office would end up severing its contract with Second Sight. There is more. The summary of the covert recordings also shows Second Sight's co-director Ron Warmington failing to get vital information from the Post Office. Ron says, "We haven't received adequate information in any of the cases other than Alan Bates' own case." Ron says that in 15 out of 31 cases that we've received through the office of James Arbuthnot, we have, in effect, nothing. So no investigative work can realistically commence. Then a possible reason for holding back information is on the summary. It comes again from the Post Office senior lawyer, Susan Crichton, secretly recorded. Susan has formed the view already notified to Second Sight, the forensic investigators. Further cases should not go through the Second Sight process, but rather through a Post Office limited managed process with senior oversight. We put this to Susan Crichton and Paula Vennells. Paula Vennells declined to comment. Susan Crichton didn't respond.
Angela, nice to meet you.
here to help.
The recent ITV drama featured the key Second Sight Post Office investigation. The drama matches the fact that its team remains angry about ordinary lives ruined. 2 years after Second Sight warned the Post Office that prosecutions could be unsafe, and 2 years after the Post Office's own lawyers warned them as well. Paula Vennells, the Post Office CEO, said this to a select committee of MPs in 2015.
And if there had been any miscarriages of justice, it would have been really important to me in the Post Office that we actually surface those. And as the investigations have gone through, so far we've had no evidence of that. And as you'll know, we're bound by the Disclosure Act to make known anything that we come across that might contribute to that.
You're sitting next to Paula Vennells in the Select Committee, and she is saying there is no evidence of miscarriages of justice. At that moment, what went through your mind?
She's lying.
To the Select Committee?
Yes.
Misleading Parliament?
Misleading Parliament.
You've no doubt of that?
No doubt whatsoever.
And her motives would be?
Cover up.
Covering up what?
The truth coming out.
The truth being?
The truth being the problems with Fujitsu, the problems with Horizon, the fact that the Post Office had known about it for many years and did very little about it, and were able to recover losses directly from sub-postmasters.
We put that opinion to Paula Vennells. She declined to comment. When the inquiry started 2 years ago, Vennells said she was truly sorry for the suffering caused to wrongly prosecuted sub-postmasters and their families. She fully supports the inquiry, adding that because it's still ongoing, it would be inappropriate to comment. But in the notorious case of sub-postmaster Jo Hamilton, we know the Post Office had evidence that her prosecution may not be safe, years before Paula Vennells said that to Parliament. Here's the investigation report into Jo Hamilton carried out by the Post Office, marked confidential. Having analysed the Horizon printouts and accounting documentation, I was unable to find any evidence of theft or that the cash figures had been deliberately inflated. Yet Jo Hamilton would be charged all the same. This report was sent to the Post Office in 2006. That's 9 years before Paula Vennells told MPs the Post Office had no evidence of miscarriages of justice. Simply one piece of evidence of many. The Post Office declined to comment, saying it fully supports the public inquiry. As Jo Hamilton has told the world, the Post Office very clearly knew and knew for years, but that was not what it told Parliament or the postmasters themselves.
Alex Thompson there, well, the former Labour MP, now Lord Arbuthnot, who's campaigned on the Horizon scandal for years, joins me now from Westminster. A Conservative MP, I beg your pardon. Lord Arbuthnot, when they're talking about shutting down MPs, they're talking about shutting you down, aren't they?
They are, clearly. And trying to shut down Alan Bates and the Justice for Sub-Postmasters Alliance. They had already, let's not forget, shut down the Sub-Postmasters Union, the National Federation of Sub-Postmasters, by paying for the whole of that union. And as a result, the sub-postmasters got no help at all from their own union.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because MPs are supposed to be treated with respect, they're supposed to be listened to, they're supposed to be able to lobby on behalf of their constituents, and they were trying to shut you down.
Yes, because Second Sight were getting too close to the truth. And the truth was very damaging for the Post Office. So they were trying to get rid of us troublesome MPs as quickly as they could.
They were trying to kill off the scandal, weren't they?
Yes, they were, as Ian Henderson has just said, they were trying to cover the whole thing up. And it is always the cover-up that makes things much, much worse, which is why Paula Vennells said in her evidence to the Select Committee something that was simply not true.
Well, exactly. I mean, Ian Henderson is perhaps bolder or less polite. He's quite clear. He says when he heard her say that there was no evidence of miscarriage of justice, she was lying.
Yes.
He's in no doubt about that. Do you agree?
I do. It's quite clear. The Post Office had instructed its own insurers 2 years before she said that to the Select Committee, that there was a risk that there were miscarriages of justice. Am I to believe that that didn't get to the Chief Executive? I'm not. So clearly the Post Office was lying to the Select Committee, and I wrote to the Speaker 2 or 3 years ago to say that that lie had been told and that evidence needed to be, and that something needed to be done about it. It is getting worse and worse.
exactly on that point about something needs to be done, it is a very serious issue, isn't it, to lie to Parliament, to lie to MPs at a select committee?
Very, very.
So what happens now?
Well, I think it is time that the police began to operate with rather more speed and effectiveness than they so far have. It's now 3 years since Mr. Justice Fraser referred two people to the police for investigation into possible perjury in front of the courts. But I think that we mustn't wait for the Post Office inquiry to produce its results. I think the police should be acting now.
On the basis of what we know right now, that there's no need to wait for the inquiry, criminal prosecutions, criminal investigations should be ongoing.
Yes, the postmasters deserve that justice is visited on those who did them so much wrong as quickly as justice was visited on the postmasters themselves.
I mean, one of the other bits of the information in the film, really just asking you in terms of your sort of personal involvement, was your constituent, Jo Hamilton. You know, the information in the film shows that there was no evidence of theft. It was written down, but they prosecuted her anyway. That is well known. It'll be well known to you. But I wonder, does it still have the ability to shock you, what is being uncovered at the moment, the ground that we're going over now?
This is a story of profound corruption at an organisation owned by and overseen by the government. I think it is deeply shocking, yes.
Lord Arbuthnot, thank you so much for talking to us this evening. Thank you.